Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're well, and thank you for joining me today. So, today's discussion is really going to focus around masternodes and our thoughts on masternodes and where we think we can, where we think masternodes are going to be important and how you guys can participate, right? So, before we actually talk about masternodes, let's dig into kind of the consensus algorithms that we're using and why we're using them and what the implications are. So, what we talk about in our white paper is that the compute nodes that actually run the software and the storage nodes that keep all the data for the software, they both run proof of stake. And what proof of stake means is that the more you stake, the greater the probability that you have of being assigned the opportunity to, the more the opportunity you have to get the right to store some data or the right to execute a transaction. Someone here seems to think we're a scam. I invite you to make a claim as to how we might be a scam. Rather than simply stating that we're a scam. Tell me, how are we a scam? Make an argument that I can respond to, rather than just scam. Or don't say anything at all. So anyway, back to what I was saying. Proof of stake. So I'm sure you guys know that a lot of blockchains today, Ethereum and Bitcoin, are proof of work. And why proof of work is very safe is if you are going to fork a blockchain, if you're going to produce more than one block, right, where the information in one block isn't accurate, meaning that you've taken tokens, for example, from somebody else and you've put that into a block, right? You would have to halve your computing power, right, to be able to mine two blocks at the same time. And that's what fundamentally makes proof of work so safe. Whereas in proof of stake, presumably or potentially, you might be able to use your stake on two different blocks at the same time. So these issues present interesting problems, right? And problems that anyone implementing proof of stake needs to address. So how are we looking at this? Well, with the use of masternodes, one of the things that the masternodes responsibilities can be is to validate, validate whether or not anyone's producing more than one block at the same time. And if they are producing blocks, more than one block at the same time, they can take the stake of the block producer. So the question is, who's the block producer? Who should be the block producer in Sparkster's blockchain? And this, again, I think is a responsibility for masternodes. You see, masternodes naturally would have to stake more tokens than regular nodes, right? There's masternodes and there's regular nodes, the computing nodes and the storage nodes. But the nodes that essentially run the network are the masternodes. And these are community nodes. They're nodes that can be held and maintained by you, not by us. But essentially, because you're involved in governing the network, you can make significantly more because you're earning from potentially every transaction that's executing across the network. So going back to, how is proof of stake used by a compute node, or how is proof of stake used by a storage node? It's used as a probability distribution function to determine which compute node or which storage node should be given the right to execute a transaction. So let's walk through that a little bit, right? Let's walk through that process a little bit. Imagine that, you own, some node owns 10% of all the tokens, and another node owns, or let's make it simple. Let's say some node owns 90% of the tokens, which, by the way, is not the case. Nobody owns more than 0.15% of Sparkster tokens today. But let's suppose someone owns 90% of the tokens. So what would happen is that 9 times out of 10, that particular node would be given the right to execute a transaction, right? And the other one time out of 10, somebody else would be chosen. So essentially, this is what probability distribution function means. The more tokens you get, the greater your likelihood is that you'll be given the ability to execute a transaction. And so some of the things that we're looking at this week has been an extremely productive week from the technology front, right? One of the things that we're looking at this week is how do we securely make these elections? How do we secure, so elections of masternodes, for example, how do we securely make, the choice of this compute node or this verification node, knowing that, people can collude. Masternodes might collude with one another. Compute nodes might collude with one another. Masternodes and compute nodes might collude with one another. How do we overcome the collusion problem? So we're looking at using a technology called Intel SGX. And I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but what Intel SGX is it's an ability to securely run code inside of a processor, right? And being able to produce a signature that specific code was run inside of the signature, was run inside of the processor. And the code that we're looking to run inside of the processor here is the random number generator, right? So that we know that the nodes aren't colluding, right? That the nodes are actually producing real random numbers. And based on this, based on producing real random numbers and being able to produce a signature that's verifiable, that it did in fact come from the processor itself and therefore hasn't been tampered with, we know we have a system that is safe and secure. And if somebody else on the network looks at these signatures and validates these signatures, and anybody else can, there's an opportunity here to steal a stake again, except you'd be stealing a stake from a masternode, which is huge, a huge stake. Then, we end up with the ability to check what everyone else is doing and thereby producing a network that's safe and reliable. So this is kind of what we're thinking around masternodes, and masternodes would earn from a kind of platform fee that would be charged, or a network fee that would be charged on every single transaction. And so these masternodes have the ability to earn from every single transaction. So I'd love to get your thoughts and hear about, what you think about Sparkster running masternodes. Hopefully I've made the case of why masternodes make sense for Sparkster, and specifically the problems that we're looking to address with Sparkster, with masternodes. So if you have questions, I'd love to take them. You can put questions to me using the Menti code 233794. That's 233794. This is Tech Tuesday content, not AMA material. Yeah, that might be true. I'm looking at the first question. So someone's saying this is Tech Tuesday question, not AMA material. That might be true, but I said this week that we'd be talking about masternodes. So that's why we're talking about masternodes. Next question, what happened to OKX? We provided an opportunity for you guys to vote on OKX. We are looking into providing an incentive for OKX, and maybe we'll be announcing that shortly. Do something like PundiX monthly airdrops. We're not looking at airdrops, not now, not in the future. And the reason we're not looking at airdrops is because we believe that they devalue the token. But there's also a bigger problem to just devaluing the token. We think that they may put our network at risk. If someone's able to earn a lot of tokens through, some form of an airdrop, or by manipulating the system through which the airdrops are distributed, for example, voting on something or signing up to something and, you know, people manipulate that system, they end up with a lot of tokens. They have the ability to impact the, you know, some of the things I just spoke about, right? That if you've picked up free tokens, you have nothing at stake. And if you have nothing at stake, then you can cause havoc in our network. So we think that airdrops are actually a risk to the stability of networks. And this is one of the reasons why we won't be participating in airdrops. End the bounty this month, and it's been running for 4 months already. They've done their part. Now time to get their rewards. I'm afraid they will FUD it longer if I prolong. So, good question. Why have we not ended? Why have we not ended the bounty program? Because the tokens are not released. So tokens for bounty hunters will not be distributed until at least a month after the token has been listed. That's what's fair to the people who paid for tokens. And so, you know, that's why we certainly won't be distributing them. When we decide to end the bounty program, is not a decision. We've not decided to end the bounty program yet. And the reason is we're working on releasing new bounty tasks. The bounty program helps keep the message of Sparkster alive outside of our group. It's one of the mechanisms that we use to communicate, you know, what Sparkster is all about. And so, you know, frankly, it's not the time to end the bounty program. Hopefully next week you'll be hearing about some new activities that will be announced in the bounty program. Thank you for the question. Every one of our team members looks Indian. How many of them are part-time contractors hired through a freelance website? 0. We have 0 people on our network, in our team, 0, that are freelancers. We have 0 people that are on our website or in our team that work for anybody but Sparkster. We have 0 people in our network that are moonlighting somewhere else, or working on some other project. Most of the people in our team have been working for me directly for about 5 years. Certainly the core development team have been working for me directly for 5 years. Amit, who's our VP of technology, has been working with me for 11 years. Diane, who's the head of our HR, VP of HR, has been working with me for 10 years. So, you know, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but, you know, nobody's a freelancer or someone we've recently hired or whatever you might think. Shaker is on our team. He is, you know, another member of our team, works directly for us in our office, not a freelancer of any kind. How many of them are Indian? Well, depends on your definition of Indian, right? Am I Indian? Well, I was born in the UK. So it depends on your definition of Indian. Am I holding ICO ETH or not? Yes, we are holding all of our ETH. I am funding the company personally, and to the tune of about $100,000 a month of my own money is funding Sparkster. So why are we holding our ETH? Well, when we were collecting ETH, the value of ETH was falling. We thought it was a short-term thing. Unfortunately, it wasn't a short-term thing. The value of ETH continued to fall. We have, however, put in place insurance against this ETH. But nonetheless, you know, I'm in a position where I can continue to fund Sparkster and it doesn't compromise the stability of Sparkster. Like I said, the people that have been working for us have been working for us for, you know, somewhere between 4 or 5 years to 11 years. The development team I'm talking about, right? Neeru's been working with us for 7 years. So, you know, long periods of time. I've been funding the company all these years. It doesn't compromise my ability to continue to fund the company because the value of ETH is down. Therefore, I don't worry too much about the value of ETH, and you don't need to either. You know, we're fortunate to be in a position where I have the ability to keep things going and not have to worry about these things. But naturally, the funds are needed for the long-term success and growth of Sparkster. And so if we end up in a position where we need to liquidate some of those funds, naturally we'll begin to liquidate what we need to liquidate for whatever reason it's needed for. There's no need to liquidate everything. Where in the white paper does it say public sale tokens will be locked up at all, not to mention indefinitely? Well, tokens are not locked up indefinitely. Tokens are locked. When you participated in the sale, it was made clear that the tokens are locked and will be unlocked at our discretion. We're exercising that ability. I have discussed extensively why we're unlocking, when we'll unlock, what we're looking for, and so forth in the previous AMA. So if you have questions about unlocking, I request you go to the previous AMA from last week. With 2 confirmed exchanges, if ICOs were listing favorably right now, or if the market had been better when tokens were distributed, would these exchanges be enough to unlock? I think that what matters about unlocking has been talked about in the past, in the previous AMA, in last week's AMA specifically. So it's not about what exchanges are present, right? It's about when the market conditions support a token listing. And when we begin to see that occurring, and we begin to see that legitimately, not from tokens that are manipulating what's going on, which is kind of what we've seen this week, but from tokens that are listing, and when most tokens, that means more than 50%, rise above their ICO price, we know it's a stable market. Am I going to show some progress on actual development instead of trying to convince you of great ideas we have and how great it's going to be? Well, what do you want to see? We release an article every week that comes from the development team, directly from the development team. They write those articles and you hear what they're working on that week. I think we've been very transparent about what the development team is doing and what they're working on. So I think that's the answer to that question. I'll take some questions from the chat. So again, people who want to call a scam, I invite you to show yourselves and actually pose a question that might challenge us. You know, I welcome you to pose questions that challenge anything that I've said in terms of any form of legitimacy. You want to question us with technology, you want to question us with our knowledge on something, you know, you want to claim that we're a scam. I invite you, I challenge you to come up with something that we would not be able to answer, or something that we may have done that would be a scam. Niru is not away. I'm seeing someone here saying that Niru is away. She's not away. She was away, but she's back. Someone says, I don't give a damn about my promoters. What do you mean by that? Shaker in the Bounty program is not accepting good articles with huge audience about the project. Okay, let's do this. Can you PM me in Telegram and I will personally look into this matter? We're not trying to ignore anybody, and you know, if you feel like you're not being treated fairly in the Bounty program, PM me directly and I'll personally look into it. So I see that the same person has concerns about the Bounty program. So, you know, please contact me and I'll look into this. Mano thinks it's wise to release the tokens after the blockchain goes live. There's a request for me to join the Turkish group. You know, I'm in the Turkish group. I don't go there very often because I don't know that people talk much English there, but I'm happy to come along, you know, and answer any questions in the Turkish group. I'll take that. I'll take that to note. Someone wants to know the use case for the tokens. Do we have a strong use case? So token utility has been discussed in the FAQ page. If you go to sparkster.me/FAQ, token utility is listed there. But let me go over it very quickly. So essentially, as I mentioned at the beginning of this call, right, tokens are used and are necessary, are required for the successful operation of Sparkster's decentralized cloud, because we're using proof of stake. And that means that the more tokens you stake, a number of things happens. Number one, you increase your probability of being assigned a transaction to execute or store as a regular node, right? But also, we use the tokens that you stake as a mechanism to hold you accountable. So if you're engaged in bad behavior, right? If you fork our blockchain and start producing blocks that are scam blocks, if you collude with people and make your friends verifiers or whatever, if you're a masternode, we can hold you accountable by taking your tokens. The person who finds, and this is key, it's not us taking your tokens, it's the person who finds that you've been cheating, the person who validates the signatures on your transactions or is able to produce a proof of misbehavior, right? If someone can produce a proof of misbehavior and other people can validate that proof of misbehavior, you'll lose your stake. It's a fundamental mechanism by which the network itself is kept safe. So it is necessary for the functioning of the network. You can think of the tokens as analogous to GPUs or ASICs in other networks. You know, those networks can't run without GPUs. Our network can't run without the tokens. They're really the same thing. Why does it matter if the market conditions are good or bad for the project? Unless we want to make a fast profit on listing. Our tokens are locked for 2 years. We can't make a profit on listing. It matters because there are people who believe in our project, right? And the people that believe in our project deserve to be protected by us, you know, and that's fundamentally why it matters. You know, if everybody leaves our project because for you know, a cycle of dumping begins and precipitates and causes everybody to exit, how is that in anybody's interests? You know, if you've not been to one of our other AMAs, I've said before that our data suggests that tokens that are listing in this market are losing 80, sometimes 90% of their value upon listing. How is that good for anybody? It isn't good for anybody. What do I think about the credits partnership with Lenovo? I think it's a great thing. A lot of people doubted credits, right? But the fact that they're able to secure large partnerships like Lenovo, that's an amazing thing. Does it benefit us? I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I haven't considered that question, but I will. Can someone trust when I say that I'm funding from my pocket? Well, you can go and look at the Sparkster contract, go to ETHScan, type in SPRK, and then click on the owner of the contract, not the creator. And you'll see that the owner has 12,500 ETH, which is what we collected. So yeah, you can see the money right there, right? We haven't moved it, we haven't sold it. So the question is, how do I pay for 3 offices around the world and all the stuff that you see, right? I think that answers your question. When is Sparkster going to launch the platform? We spoke about this yesterday. We've announced an innovation fund that people can apply for, and that's the way in which we want to give people access to the platform. And the reason that's the case, as I mentioned last week, is because if everybody has access to the platform now, it will impose a lot of demands on our tech team. And the challenge there is it will cause us to slip or miss the deadline for the mainnet. And because we don't want to compromise that, we're limiting or controlling who has access to the platform directly. However, if you want to try it out, you can go to sparkster.me/try. Could we provide masternodes to ICO participants only? You know, that's something very interesting. So, well, the only people today that hold tokens are people who've participated in the token sale. So you guys, right at this point in time, have all of the tokens, and you control. The decision is up to you. If you continue to hold the tokens, you'll be the only people that have enough tokens to be able to be masternodes. If you're interested in being a masternode, right, we'd love to have you kind of reach out to us and become one of the first masternodes in the network. Let's make that happen, because naturally we need masternodes to launch with. So yes, we're very interested in that. How long can I afford to pay out of my pocket? A while, at least a year. At this current cost structure, at least a year, without a problem. Can I share my vision for Sparkster in 3 years? So part of my time this week, I've spent interviewing PR firms. So I met approximately 6 PR firms here in London this week. One was an American PR firm. And, what we're really focused on from our activities is bringing on board large customers, users, partners that will help us, in the long run here. But really, if we're to look 3 years out, what I see is that, the area that we're going to have the biggest impact is by enabling people to be able to bring their ideas to reality without having to code. I see that as the lowest hanging fruit. And what I see is that the use of the blockchain, or the use of Sparkster's decentralized cloud, is something that people will use because it makes financial sense to do so. On Tuesday, the Tuesday just gone, in our tech talk, I explained why people will use the Sparkster decentralized cloud. And the fundamental reason is because it will be cheaper than traditional cloud computing, right? Significantly cheaper than traditional cloud computing. And I explained why. Now, what I think actually this kind of leads me to think what the future of our industry is and what the future of this technology is, right? Some of you have heard me say that when this industry makes a real difference to real people in the real world, that's when it's going to be adopted by the mainstream, when it solves real problems for real people in the real world, right? So what I think that means is that it's not specifically about blockchain, but it's about how blockchain can be used to solve problems, how blockchain can be used to solve real problems, right? And in our case, we're using the technology to solve problems in the realm of making decentralized cloud computing a reality, right? Can I compare myself to Definity, Anchor, Nervous? Okay, I'll be honest with you. I don't look at other projects. And the reason that I don't, one, we're busy working on our own project. And because I don't want to have their ideas infiltrate our minds or infiltrate our thinking and then we get accused of some form of plagiarism. So, we don't look at other networks because it probably isn't very productive to do so. However, that being said, that doesn't mean that well, let me give you my opinion on kind of competition. I think competition's a great thing, and you guys should think competition's a great thing, and I'll tell you why. Because an industry isn't built by one person. It's not built by one company, right? It's built by a series of companies. And so for people like Dfinity or somebody else who's in the cloud computing space, it would make sense for us to work together to promote the idea of decentralized cloud computing. If we're both commanding our resources to communicate that idea, and making people aware of that, everybody wins, right? Rather than fighting one another, we should work together, right? We are essentially one industry. What is a masternode? Amazing Fun is asking. So masternodes, so there's regular nodes, someone who's running a regular miner, which is, a storage node or a compute node. But what a masternode is it's one of the nodes that's involved in, actually running or governing the network, right? And governing sounds centralized, but it really isn't, because there's a voting process that decides who these masternodes are, and they'll only probably be masternodes for some short period of time. I'm looking at maybe an hour. But let's focus on what a masternode is. What they're really involved in is coordinating the network, and because they're involved in coordinating the network, they're acting on every transaction, and therefore they have the opportunity to earn from every transaction, right? The difference between a masternode and a regular node is the regular nodes don't necessarily earn from every transaction. They earn from the transaction that they've won the right to execute on. I don't know if you can see Nero, but she kind of just walked by. Anyway, so compute nodes and storage nodes, they win the right to execute transactions based on a probability distribution function based on how many tokens they have staked. Masternodes, they need to meet a threshold, a certain criteria for how many tokens they are staking. But in return, they get to earn from every single transaction on the network, and presumably would end up making significantly more money. So I hope that answers your question. Well, so Patrick's asking, what's the supply required for running a masternode? How many tokens do you need? We're not sure yet, but what I'm thinking, so this isn't definite, but what I'm thinking is in the order of about 100 to 150,000 tokens, Spark tokens. The number has to be high enough to ensure that the threat of losing your tokens is so great you'll not participate in illicit behavior. Because if someone catches you, you'll lose that stake. So Amazing Fun says that the $30 million hard cap is very low compared to Dfinity's $2 billion hard cap. I agree with you. I certainly agree with you. And I think I mentioned in last week's AMA that an extremely famous VC, not just in crypto, but I'm talking about in Silicon Valley, an extremely famous VC by the name of Andreessen Horowitz, or some might know him as Andreessen Horowitz, invested something like $60 million in Dfinity at a value, if I understood that correctly, at a value of $2 billion, right? So if our competitor is valued at $2 billion and our effective market cap based on how much we raised is $30 million, well, the difference between $2 billion and $30 million is approximately 70x, 70x. So I'll let you put two and two together about what that might mean. Will dApps created by Sparkster be locked into the Sparkster network, having to pay Sparkster's fees, or will the projects be portable to other clouds and chains? So you can integrate other chains as we've partnered with Uchain and Utrust, not Uchain, Utrust, and with credits. So you can integrate and execute transactions across those networks, but you cannot use Sparkster's no-code platform to build tools and then, for example, move them to Amazon. However, there are people that we're speaking to, some large networks that we're speaking with, about being able to build for their network. So today, you can use Sparkster's platform to build a smart contract for Ethereum. You would build it in Sparkster free of charge, and then you'd execute it and run it on Ethereum. And if you don't want Sparkster to be involved with that for any reason, then that would be the case. For some reason, then that would be the case. There's another network that we're in conversations with. We've signed an MOU with, a memorandum of understanding. We're not ready to announce this yet because we're working on timelines and other things with this network. However, you'll be able to do the same thing. You'll be able to build in Sparkster for their network and run it on their network. So the answer to the question is, where we've got a formal relationship for that to happen, you'll be able to build on Sparkster and run somewhere else. Where we don't have such an integration designed and developed, well, what you'll be building will obviously be specific to our architecture and therefore can only run on our network. Do I plan to come to Turkey? I've actually been to Turkey twice. It's a beautiful country and a great place to go on vacation. So maybe, soon I'll return to Turkey. The deadline for the Innovation Fund is the 15th of September. I'll be honest with you, I've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to look at the applications. And Patrick's invited me back to Amsterdam. All right, guys, we've kind of run over a little bit from where I wanted to be in terms of timeframes. I want to try and keep these to 30 minutes, and I know we sometimes go a little bit over. But I want to thank everyone for being here. I thank you for your questions, and I thank you for your time. And once again, anyone who wants to discredit what we're doing, I invite you to challenge us formally, right? Rather than claiming that we're a scam. I'm happy to debate with you publicly in the form of a public video or whatever you want to do. If you have some concerns, I'd be honored to respond to them publicly. Thank you everyone for your time, and I'll see you back in the Telegram group soon. Take care. Bye-bye.